Welcome back to our panel discussion, The Future of IT, How CIOs Can Enable Service-Oriented Enterprise, sponsored by ServiceNow on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. Our guests today are Don Adcock, the Deputy CIO of the Energy Department, John Edgar, the Vice President of IT at the U.S. Postal Service, retired Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, Senior Vice President of Booz Allen Hamilton, and Steve Alfieris, the Vice President of Federal at ServiceNow. And I'm your moderator, Tom Temin. And so I want to get into the security piece, and one of the biggest security initiatives in the government now is FedRAMP. And so FedRAMP brings in the cloud providers as part of this whole service management architecture. Maybe a beneficial element, but something of a complicating element. So I'd like to ask the panel how that ties into how it all ties in for you as FedRAMP develops and more vendors get approved. Susan?
Thank you, Tom. It is very important as we look at the balance of access to your data and protection of your information. And there's an art and a science to it. You want to be responsive to the client to make sure they can get to the access when they need, but yet protect that information from sources that should not have it. And what we're doing through this architecture work, this service-oriented architecture work, is building confidence in the client that they have assured communications. They will have access to their data no matter where they are. So in the case of the United States Army, if they had to deploy tonight, they would join a joint task force with the confidence that when they reach back, they've got that access in the cloud computing environment that we're building for them as we continue to work through that. And in Booz Allen, we have the mentality of security first. If you try to build in security afterwards, you probably don't have it right. And so we are working with ServiceNow in looking at their risk management framework and how that ties to FedRAMP. Again, single FISMA compliance standards as we're working through it. And it is making us more secure by doing these things.
Don?
One of our key initiatives right now is to be able to create capacity and performance, if you will, through the DOE cloud of clouds or structure of clouds. And as Susan was saying, it's absolutely critical that we work through the security components of that. I don't think that cloud introduces any really out there security issues that we already face today when we bring in capabilities into the environment. But one of the things that we do need to ensure is as we look at these new capabilities and technologies that we have those standards pre-decided and predetermined so that we sort of know what we're bringing into the environment. It helps us be able to deliver our IT services much more quickly, much more rapidly, and put that capability into the the end user's hands.
All right. And John, what about Postal with lots of cloud issues?
Yeah, I think when you look at data centers and data center technology, the rate of change with which it's accelerating makes trying to maintain that security posture yourself makes that exceptionally difficult. And when you look at the cloud providers, they're meeting those requirements for multiple different companies, government agencies, and all the various regulations and requirements that go along with that. So as they continue to evolve and achieve those various certifications, it really provides an enhanced level of trust in the capabilities that they can provide. So we see being able to procure those cloud services more easily as a way to accelerate our delivery of services to our end customers as well. Whether it's infrastructure as a service or a software as a service solution or a combination thereof, being able to acquire that faster, being able to stand it up faster to our end users in a secure way where both their access and their data are protected, and be able to do that in weeks instead of months is a tremendous asset and something that we definitely want to start to build much more upon.
So that level of trust gets you closer to that provision on demand model that the cloud providers promise, but it's really not quite there yet for the federal government.
Yeah, I think the growth and the adoption of all the various regulations that are out there for the cloud providers gives a great baseline. And as more and more companies achieve that, your pool of certified companies that you can have that level of trust in makes it easier for you to find the right solution for yourself and move that forward very quickly.
All right, and Steve, is FedRAMP only for the cloud people?
I would say yes. FedRAMP is in fact built around cloud offerings. So whether you're an infrastructure as a service provider, a software as a service provider, or a platform as a service, And then all those characteristics or models really need to go through the FedRAMP process. Prior to FedRAMP, FISMA controlled the security controls on what was authorized in order to be consumed, if you will, by federal customers and federal market. We've been, very fortunate as ServiceNow to have made all the initial investments necessary in order to meet FISMA moderate ATO requirement, and that has led to some really great adoption by the market. We have tens and tens and tens and tens of customers currently residing in our FISMA operated cloud. And we've built the practices around that. And, from a ServiceNow perspective, we have thousands of customers globally that are really riding in our cloud. So we are a pure cloud company, and we have to get it right. And to date, we've gotten it right, and we continue to make the investments necessary. As it relates to specifically to FedRAMP, we have chosen really the path that leads us to the best benefit for the government, which is a joint approval board path in the FedRAMP certification process. So we are in the in-process state right now. We expect that to be adjudicated in the not-too-distant future, but we're making all the right moves, and we're very thrilled to be getting a full JAB approval at some point in the near future.
So what does the JAB approval enable you to do?
It really validates the fact that the Joint Advisory Board has reviewed the security package, control package of our offering, that we're doing all the right things as it relates to the continuous data monitoring activity and all the appropriate patching for our infrastructure. The good news is we manage every component of that IT stack, everything from the servers and the infrastructure all the way through the delivery of the ServiceNow platform, software platform. And it's provided some great benefits relating to provisioning, cloud provisioning, like you mentioned in your question. It should be pretty much you provision an instance and it should be available. The good news is that 24 hours after you place an order or give an award to ServiceNow, we stand up a provisioned instance of your environment for you. So that provisioning is really, really quick.
So federal agencies can be as agile as Netflix.
Absolutely, and they are today. The ServiceNow customers are, in fact, that agile today. So.
All right. So I want to return to the point that you mentioned, continuous diagnostics and monitoring, because that's a big, big push for security in the government. And it seems like a good opportunity for something that we haven't said specifically today or explicitly, but what we've been talking about, and that is orchestration of various processes so that they result in a virtualized way of delivering them without a lot of manual work. So I wonder if you could give us an idea from the agency level, orchestration of CDM, because of the tie-in to the dashboard that eventually will be stood up by Homeland Security. A lot of moving parts in something that sounds simple like CDM. Susan?
Yeah, I applaud the effort that the department is taking on there, because each of the agencies that work with them are so unique in what they have to be able to deliver. In sensitivity, whether it's the Justice Department, the Energy Department, where there's SCADA threats. And we all have to recognize we're still operating in a high threat area when it comes to cyber operations. Individuals who intend to do harm to us, change our way of life in many of these instances. And that's why meeting these standards that is being set by FedRAMP is very important. And going after the continuous monitoring is absolutely critical, so that you can detect that unauthorized probe immediately versus letting it get inside of your network and then you're dealing with something else as you're working through it. And when you think about, we've been IT heavy in our discussion today, but what this service-oriented architecture brings for us is it brings a standardization across all functional areas. And when you think about personal identification information in HR, when you think about HIPAA information in the medical world, this model is going to assist us to be able to do that continuing monitoring and standardization and protection of that information. And that's what we're really staying focused on.
And what about the data sharing piece? Can that also be part of the whole service delivery?
Absolutely. And that's about how we're taking the data and, more importantly, how you're accessing it. What are your certifications when you come into the cloud? Which part of the cloud are you allowed to operate inside of? And especially in the Department of Defense, when we're working all the way from the unclassified to the protection of the FOUO, all the way to the compartmentalized information at the high end. And so what you want to be able to do is not build separate instantiations because we're losing our efficiency there, and that's what we're going after. And so what we want to be able to do is when we allow you and your device to access that cloud, we're going to do a couple things. One, you're going to agree to let us monitor you, continuous monitoring, to make sure you're not injecting any kind of a malware or virus into the environment, and more importantly, insider threat. We're going to watch what you're taking back out of that cloud and why you're taking what information, where you're looking during that time. But more importantly, we're going to have your credentials there to say, yes, you're allowed in this portion of the cloud architecture.
Okay, and so the CDM at Energy, I know you have a big part in that. What are you monitoring for, and how does the orchestration come into play here as you try to use tools and look at your networks and also ship the data to DHS?
We're really proud of a new capability that we stood up last year that is now at IOC, or Initial Operating Capability, called the Joint Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. And the JC3, as we refer to it within the department, is really our linchpin to continuous monitoring and diagnostics. That is the hub, our security hub. We're constantly putting into it new tools to monitor, as Susan was saying, who's accessing what, who's accessing and taking things in and out of the cloud, and within our traditional environment. So it's key, and that is one, coordination across the entire department within the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and then of course it is our liaison across other federal entities to include the Department of Homeland Security. So very important, something we're very, very focused on.
And that's all encompassed in your service-oriented architecture?
It is, and we use different capabilities to sort of track and feed information into it. Everything from something simple like configuration management, asset management, and things like that, all the way up to actually who's scanning and looking and trying to actually get in the front and or back door of the department and across the department.
So you scan for intrusions, but also scanning for configuration and also
Configuration change and things.
Patch management.
That is absolutely correct. Yes, we do.
The big three maybe there. And John, at the Postal Service, there's a bigger cybersecurity component than I think people may often realize.
That's true, and I think everything that we've just talked about here are the same things that we're working through. We're working with Homeland Security to engage ourselves in with the whole CDM effort and make sure that we're in line with the rest of the agencies and the various solutions that Homeland Security is requiring. But in a more internal level, while we don't have classified information, we do have a lot of personally identifiable information, address information, things like that we need to protect to make sure that the identities of our companies and people across the country are protected as it should be. So we have a number of internal solutions that we've been using for a long time to do that we're now enhancing with the whole CDM and the orchestrated solutions there. In addition, we have a few other requirements on the Postal Service that, while somewhat ancillary, but we are required to be SOX compliant. So we have that, and we're using a lot of the compliance processes to ensure that, and that's something else that will be being further automated through this platform. And we're also in the middle of a major effort to achieve payment card industry compliance for all the credit card transactions. So things around data encryption, data protection, the discussions around who has access to what data all apply there as well, and are things that we're implementing in the organization.
All right, in the few minutes we have left, and Steve, maybe we'll start with you with this question. There's been a lot of CIO turnover, and some of the thought leaders have left. Some of the thought leaders, luckily, are still in place, and some are still serving the federal government, like Susan, in a different capacity. And so as this whole new era dawns of orchestrated services and cloud and continuous diagnostics and monitoring and user self-service and mobility, all of these elements, it's really a new world of IT. Steve, what do you see ahead, and who's going to carry the ball?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We each have about 45 seconds to answer this one.
So my initial response, is real simple. The ball is going to be carried forward by all of the mentorship that those leaders that are leaving government now, all that mentorship that they've done. There's just a crop of very innovative, energetic leaders that are emerging that are taking the ball forward, and it needs to happen. As we all know, the transformation of IT as a business partner in the government with the seat at the table with the mission partners is happening, and I don't think that momentum is going to change.
All right, Susan, as a just left person?
Absolutely. I see more and more the collaboration between business partners, federal partners, and academia is absolutely critical as we move forward. And the desire and the teaming to ensure that we stay the most powerful nation in the world, and IT leaders will bring those communities closer and closer together. And people like you, Tom, and Federal News Radio that's telling our story is what's going to be critical as we team through this.
All right. And John, the Postal Service is going to be with us one way or another. It's in the Constitution.
That's right.
It's Article 3 of Section 1, I think it is. I'm sorry if I'm not exactly right. I have read that clause. So tell us where you see the innovation and the leadership
I
coming.
think this ongoing collaboration between government agencies and private industry and through cloud services is a way to really bridge that gap and ensure that from a technology and a technology leadership standpoint, we have that close collaboration. We have services that are being developed and delivered that meet the needs of both sides of the fence, and that we're getting away from a lot of the what used to be perceived as unique government services and solutions that industry was, or private industry did things different. I think that they really don't. I think the capabilities that platforms like this, the infrastructure as a service platforms, software as a solutions platforms, really help to standardize that and allow us all to take advantage.
All right. And Don Adcock, you get the final 30 seconds.
I just say that I'll echo what I've heard. I think that the leaders before us have done a fantastic job building a really talented cadre of IT professionals that are going to carry on that thought leadership. It really is the binding between industry, academia, and government that bring to bear some phenomenal things, and that do keep us and does keep us as a world leader and the strongest and best country in the world.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. I want to thank today's guests, Don Adcock, Deputy CIO of the Energy Department, Steve Alfieris, the Vice President for Federal at ServiceNow, retired Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, now Senior Vice President at Booz Allen Hamilton, and John Edgar, Vice President of IT at the U.S. Postal Service. I'm Tom Temin, federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.
On behalf of ServiceNow, thank you for joining us for this discussion. You'll be presented with some polling questions as you leave the webinar to help us improve future sessions. We do appreciate your feedback. We'll have the archive from this session available shortly, and a link will be sent to you for you to share with your colleagues. Those of you who requested a training certificate for this webinar should receive it in the next 2 weeks. Be sure to register for upcoming webinars from the Capital Exchange. Look for upcoming sessions at www.fedinsider.com/events. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you.